The owl stood at the end of the third street like a tired old man who had seen too many funerals and too many rainy seasons. It was not a big house. Nobody would call it beautiful in the way people on television called houses beautiful. The paint had peeled from the walls in several places. The compound gate had started leaning slightly to one side, and the corridor floor always held a faint smell of dust, damp cement, and cooking smoke. But to Mama and her children, the house was more than shelter. It was memory. It was legacy. It was the last thing Papa left behind before the ground took him. Every crack in the wall had a story. Every squeaky board on the floor carried his footsteps from years before. The guava tree in the corner of the compound had been planted by his own hand when the youngest child was still small enough to be carried on his back. On some evenings, when the breeze was kind, Mama would sit outside and look at that tree like it was a living photograph of the man she had loved. That house was the reason the family still felt like a family, and now 17-year-old Timmy was staring at it as though he had already begun to lose it. He sat on the front step, elbows on his knees, watching the evening settle over the neighborhood. Children were playing football in a gutter-filled street. Somebody's generator had started making its usual angry noise. A woman selling roasted corn was shouting prices at passers-by. From somewhere far off came the sound of a church choir singing with the kind of passion that made poverty look briefly forgivable. Timmy should have been inside helping Mama pound yam. Instead, he was thinking about money. The problem with money is that it enters the mind of a mosquito and refuses to leave. One small thought becomes another. One need becomes 10. Before long, a person begins to believe that if only one door opened, all the others would follow. Timmy was that kind of boy. He was not lazy. That was the cruel thing. He had tried. He had hawked sachet water during the heat of the day. He had helped a mechanic for 2 weeks until the man's temper made the job feel worse than hunger. He had carried blocks at a building site until his palms blistered and the pay was still not enough to buy a single bag of rice. He had even followed one uncle to the market to help unload crates, only for the uncle to say at the end of the day, "You know, family work no dey count like that." The phrase had burned in him for days, so yes, Timmy was trying. But trying did not stop the rent from chasing them. It did not stop the younger ones from needing school supplies. It did not stop Mama from pretending she was eating enough when everybody could see her plate was always the smallest. And it did not stop the shame that entered the room every time somebody asked, "How are you people managing since Papa died?" The answer was simple. They were not managing, they were surviving. "Where are your thoughts?" Mama asked from behind him. Timmy looked up quickly. He had not heard her come outside. She stood in the doorway with a wrapper tied high around her waist and a tired look on her face. She had the kind of tired that no sleep ever fixed. Since Papa died, she had become a woman who carried grief like a second child on her back. "Nowhere," Timmy said. Mama gave him a look that said she had already heard enough lies in this life to know the shape of one when she saw it. "Bring that basin," she said. "Let's finish pounding before darkness enters." He stood up obediently. The younger children were inside arguing over who had eaten more groundnuts. Little Shade, the last born, kept saying why the electricity had gone off again, as though the NEPA people were personally responsible for her disappointment. Kuli, the second child, had school the next morning and was trying to force his uniform into a state of cleanliness by rubbing one sleeve with a wet rag. Life in the house was noisy in the way poor homes often are. Even in sadness, there was movement. Even in lack, there was laughter. But beneath all of it, there was pressure. A pressure that sat on the family quietly and made everybody speak a little softer than they wanted to. Timmy brought the basin into the kitchen area and stood beside Mama while she pounded yam with the strength of a woman who had long stopped waiting for help. After a few minutes, she said, "You have not eaten properly today." "I ate." "What did you eat?" He hesitated. That was answer enough. Mama stopped pounding and looked at him. Timmy, he shrugged. It is not serious. He laughed a little to lighten the mood. Even hunger is serious now. Mama did not smile. That made the silence between them more painful than a quarrel. Finally, she said, your father did not build the house so you people could starve under it. Timmy lowered his head. That house. Always that house. It was the family's pride and the family's burden. Papa had worked as a civil servant for years, saving little by little. He was not rich, but he was careful. He believed in ownership, the way some men believe in prayer. Before he died, he had told Mama, no matter what happened, hold this house for the children. And Mama had held it through death, held it through illness, held it through school fees, held it through the nights when there was no money for kerosene and they ate beans without oil. It was the only inheritance they had, and Timmy, being the oldest son, carried its meaning most heavily. That night, after the children had gone to bed and the house had settled into its familiar quiet, Timmy sat in the dark room he shared with Kunle and stared at the ceiling. He could hear Mama coughing softly in her corner. He could hear Shade turning in her sleep. He could hear the distance of sound of music from a neighbor's house where people with less trouble were probably laughing too loudly. He turned over and over in his mind the same thought he had been fighting for weeks. Money. Fast money. The kind of money that could fix everything before anybody had to kneel and beg. The kind of money that could keep the house safe. The kind of money that could make Mama stop looking like she was constantly apologizing to life. He had heard the stories before. The stories of men who borrowed small and returned big. Stories of people who knew a match before it started. Stories of boys who changed their whole family's destiny from one lucky night. The World Cup final was coming. The whole country was talking about it. Bosses carried arguments. Barbers' shops carried predictions. Beer parlors carried false confidence. Even church members after service would lower their voice and discuss who was likely to win, as though faith and football lived in the same room. Timmy had no business joining that conversation seriously, but desperation has a way of making foolish ideas sound wise. And then there was the gang leader. Everybody in the area knew him. His name was Don Kola, though nobody called him that to his face unless they wanted trouble. He had money, influence, boys who followed him around like bodyguards, and a type of voice that made ordinary people lower their heads without realizing it. He was the man people borrowed from when banks were too slow and shame was too fast. He was also the kind of man who made every fever look like a trap. Timmy had seen him once at a viewing center, laughing while men around him argued over a match. He wore a white kaftan and a dark sunglasses at night, as if he wanted the world to remember he did not need the sun to see people beneath him. The thought came to Timmy in pieces first, then all at once. Borrow from Don Kola, use the money to bet on the final, win enough to pay him back, and save the house. It sounded insane when he spoke it aloud in his head. That was how he knew it was the kind of plan a desperate boy might believe. He sat up suddenly, Kule mumbled in his sleep. Timmy looked at the small room, the cracked wall, the torn curtain, the worn mattress, and the quiet house holding all of them together like a final promise. Then he thought of the kitchen, the leaking roof, the debts, the school uniforms, Mama's exhausted face, and the thought returned stronger this time. Just one chance. Just one. If he could make the right bets, everything would change. Outside, a dog barked. Inside, the house remained unaware that one of its own sons was already beginning to sell its future in his mind. Tomorrow, he would go to Don Kola. Tomorrow, he would ask for money. Tomorrow, he would step closer to a decision that would make the whole family pay for one's boy's hunger and one's night foolish hope. And somewhere in the distance, as the neighborhood slept at the World Cup final drew near, destiny was already waiting for him with open hands. By morning, Timmy had talked himself into believing the plan was not madness. That is how bad ideas survive in the mind of a desperate person. They grow roots overnight. They wake up looking respectable. They put on sandals and start sounding like wisdom. He told himself he was not stealing. He told himself he was not selling the house. He told himself he was only borrowing against it, using what already belonged to the family to rescue the family. It sounded noble when he said it softly. It sounded foolish when he said it louder. The truth sat in his chest like a stone. Still, he left the house after breakfast and headed toward the place where Don Collar usually spent his afternoons. The neighborhood itself seemed to know where he was going, because the closer Timmy got, the quieter the streets became. Not silent. Lagos never truly became silent, but there was a different kind of noise in places around dangerous men. People spoke less, smiled less, walked faster. Don Cola's lounge was at the back of a row of shops, beside a betting center, a barber's shop, and a frozen drinks kiosk that always seemed busier than it should have been. The front of the building looked harmless enough, with a signboard painted in a faded blue and gold, but everybody knew the real business happened inside, where chairs were always occupied by men pretending not to be afraid. Timmy stood outside for a moment, wiping sweat from his palm onto his shorts. He had never begged a dangerous man for money before. He hoped this would be the first and last time inside. The room smelled of cigarette smoke, pepper soup, stale beer, and men who had lost arguments they would never admit to. There was a television mounted high on the wall playing highlights of old football matches, because the live game was still days away and people liked to prepare themselves with borrowed confidence. A small group of boys were in the corner laughing too loudly at nothing. One of them looked up when Timmy entered and gave him the kind of stare that asked a question without saying it. Timmy approached the counter. "Who you dey find?" the man behind it asked. "I want to see Don Collar." The man sized him up. "Why?" Timmy swallowed. "It is personal." The man let out a short laugh. "Everybody wey wan see am say na personal." Timmy stayed quiet. The man looked toward the back room and called, "Baba, one small boy dey ask for you." A few seconds later, the back door opened. Don Collar came out like a man stepping into a room he had already paid for. He was broad-shouldered, neatly dressed in a dark shirt that fit him too well to be cheap, and he wore a gold wristwatch that flashed every time he moved his hand. His beard was trimmed with precise of a man who wanted his face to speak before his mouth did. He was not especially tall, but he carried himself in a way that made the room feel smaller. His eyes fell on Timmy. "Who be this one?" he asked. Timmy immediately lowered his head a little. "Good afternoon, sir." Don Collar smiled. It was not a warm smile. It was the sort of smile that made people feel they had been noticed and measured at the same time. "Afternoon. You want to see me?" "Yes, sir." "For what?" Timmy took a breath. "I need help." That caught Don Collar's full attention. He pulled out a chair, sat, and crossed one leg over the other. "Everybody need help. The problem is the kind of help they want." Timmy stood still. The men around the room began pretending not to listen more carefully. Don Collar tapped the arm of his chair. "Sit down, boy." Timmy sat. For a second, he felt small, enough to fit in a pocket. "So," Don Collar said, leaning back, "talk." Timmy explained carefully, choosing his words as if he could make the truth sound less dangerous by arranging it well. He said his family was struggling. He said the house was their only inheritance. He said there was a chance coming up with the World Cup final. He said he could raise money quickly and pay back the loan if only he could get one shot. Don Collar listened without interrupting. That was somehow worse than being interrupted. When Timmy finished, there was silence. Then Don Collar leaned forward slightly. "You won't borrow money to bet?" Timmy nodded, heart pounding. "And you want to use your family house as collateral?" "Yes, sir." Don Collar stared at him like a man looking at a goat that had volunteered itself for sacrifice. "Who sent you?" he asked. "Nobody sent me, sir." "You sure?" "Yes, sir." The older man laughed once. "This kind of madness no need middleman." A few of the boys in the room chuckled quietly. Timmy's ears burned, but he kept his face down. Don Kola rested his elbows on his knees. How old are you? 18, sir. 18? He repeated, almost amused. And you dey gamble house? Timmy said nothing. The gang leader watched him for a moment, then asked, You know what is funny? What, sir? Poor people love risk more than rich people. Rich people gamble with money they can lose. Poor people gamble with what they cannot afford to touch. The sentence sat heavy in the room. Timmy felt exposed, but he also felt a strange flicker of hope. Don Kola was still talking. That meant he had not laughed him out yet. I can pay back, Timmy said quickly. I know the team. I know the players. It is a sure game. Don Kola's mouth curved. Sure game? Yes, sir. Do you know how many men have said that before losing everything? Timmy looked up. Don Kola held his gaze for a long moment, then stood. Come with me. Timmy followed him through the back door into a smaller office that felt colder than the front room. There was a desk, a fan making tired noises on the ceiling, and a safe tucked into the corner. On the wall hung frame photographs of men in expensive clothes, shaking hands with people whose names were probably dangerous to know. Don Kola sat behind the desk and folded his arm. Your father is dead, yes? Timmy blinked. Yes, sir. How many children? 3 children. And your mother? She is alive. Good. Don Kola nodded slowly. At least, your story has a proper shape. Timmy did not know what to say to that, so he stayed silent. Don Kola leaned back. Listen to me, boy. Money is not the problem. Everybody can find money. The real problem is what your heart does when the money starts looking like a solution. Timmy frowned, not fully understanding. Don Kola continued. You think bet will save you because you have seen people win, but you have not seen all the people who lost their shoes, their phones, their wives, their rent, and their sense before the few winners began shouting. Timmy swallowed. The words felt too wise for a man he was afraid of. Then Don Kola reached into his desk drawer and brought out a brown envelope. Timmy's breathing changed. This one, Don Kola said, tapping the envelope, contains enough to make you feel powerful for one night. Timmy stared at it. That power is dangerous. I understand, sir. No, you don't. Timmy's face tightened. Don Kola gave a faint smile. If you understood, you would leave now. The room was very quiet. Timmy's palms were wet again. The gang leader placed the envelope back on the desk. Tell me something. If I give you this money and you lose it, what exactly do you think happens? Timmy hesitated. I will find a way. Don Kola laughed, genuinely this time, though the laughter carried no kindness. Find a way? Yes, sir. You people always say that when you cannot see the teeth of the thing you are entering. He stood again and moved to the window. Outside, boys were buying snacks from a roadside store. A bus eased at a junction. Somewhere nearby, a woman was shouting at a child for running too close to the road. Don Kola turned back to face him. I will give you the money, he said. Timmy's head snapped up, but Timmy went still. There is always a but. Don Kola returned to his seat. You will sign a paper. Your mother will sign too. Timmy felt the room tilt slightly. She will not know it is a gambling loan, Don Kola said calmly. You will tell her it is for a business opportunity. Timmy blinked. Sir? Don Kola raised one hand. Do not start with morals now. You came here to survive. I am helping survivor with paperwork. Timmy stared at him in horror. Don Kola smiled. If you win, everybody is happy. If you lose, I collect the house. That is how the world works. Timmy's mouth went dry. He should have stood up and walked out. He knew that even while he sat there, but hunger had already done too much. He knew that even while he sat there, he should have stood up and walked out. He knew that even when he sat there, but hunger had already done too much talking inside him. Fear had made a home in his ribs. The house behind him in his mind looked thinner every second. Mama's cough returned to him like a voice. I need time, he said quickly. Don Kola snorted. Time is what poor people borrow from the future and call it hope. Timmy flinched. The gangster watched him for a while, then said, I like you. You still look confused enough to regret this properly. He pushed a pen across the desk. Timmy looked at him, then at the envelope, then at the paper waiting beside it. Donkola said, if she agrees, you sign. If she refuses, you go home and continue suffering the honest way. The words stung because they were true. Timmy stood up on his shaky legs and left the office with the paper in his hands, his mind spinning. By the time he reached home, his family had already gathered in the small sitting area, preparing rice and stew from the little there was left. Shade was singing to herself while playing with a spoon. Kunle was reading a torn school note aloud like the words of the paper had personally offended him. Mama was seated near the stove, fanning the fire. She looked up when Timmy entered. You are back early, she said. He forced a smile. Yes, something in his face must have worried her because she asked, what is it? The children went quiet. Timmy felt their eyes on him. He folded the paper in his hands in a moment. He had the strangest feeling that the house itself was listening. Timmy did not speak immediately. He stood in the doorway with the paper folded in his hand, looking at the people he loved most in the world and wondering how a single decision could ruin the shape of the family. Mama noticed first. Her eyes narrowed slightly. Timmy. He forced a smile so weak it barely existed. Nothing, Mama. I am just tired. But tired people did not carry their chest the way he was carrying his. Colin looked up from his school note. You look like somebody that has seen exam results. Shade giggled. That small laugh should have helped. Instead, it made Timmy feel worse. He walked to the corner and sat down, pretending to rest while the weight of Donkola's offer pressed against his rib like a stone. He could still hear the gangster's voice in his head. If you win, everybody is happy. If you lose, I collect the house. The house. Always the house. The words seemed to sit in the middle of the room like a third conversation nobody else could hear. Mama served the food. There was not in much. Rice stretched with stew that had too little meat to call itself generous. But she divided it carefully, making sure each child got a fair share. That was how she survived life, by stretching what could not truly stretch and hoping nobody would ask for more than the pot could give. Timmy watched her work and felt his throat tightened. How could he tell her that he had just walked into the shadow of a man who would take their roof if he failed to win against fate? How could he tell her that he had begun to consider betting with the only inheritance left to them? He picked at his food in silence. Mama noticed. You are not eating, I'm eating. You are pushing food around like somebody in mourning. Kule looked over. Maybe he has fallen in love. Shade laughed again. Timmy gave his brother a flat look. Go and finish your homework. I don't have homework. Then go and begin regrets in advance. That made Kule laugh, and even Mama smiled a little despite herself. For a moment, the room softened. That was the danger of families. Even in trouble, they could still make you laugh. Enough to forget the edge of the cliff for 2 seconds. But the money problem did not leave. It waited. After dinner, Mama called him aside while the children were busy outside. She folded her wrapper tighter around her waist and looked at him with the careful face of a mother who can tell when a child is carrying a secret too big for his body. Sit, she said. He obeyed. She studied him for a moment, then asked what happened today. Nothing, Timmy. He looked at the floor. She sighed. You have your father's stubbornness. It is not always useful. He let out a tiny laugh despite himself. Then she reached over and touched his nail. Tell me. He wanted to tell her the truth. He almost did. The words were right there. But then he pictured the look on her face if she heard the rest. The shock, the fear, the disappointment, and something in him folded inward. So he lied. It is just work, he said. I met a man about a business thing. Mama frowned. What business thing? He shrugged. Small opportunity. Opportunity, she repeated. Yes. Her eyes stayed on the face too long. Then she asked him quietly, is it safe? Timmy swallowed. Yes, that word was a betrayal. Mama sat back unconvinced. Your father used to say, she murmured, when a thing is too easy, ask what part of your life is trying to collect. Timmy looked at her sharply. She continued, no good thing is ever free, not truly. Even blessings have responsibility attached to them. He nodded, though the words only made him guilt worse. She leaned closer. If somebody is asking you to risk this house, Timmy, do not do it lightly. His chest tightened. She knew something. Maybe not everything, but enough. He gave a careful smile. Mama, nobody's taking this out. She watched him. Then, in the quiet way mothers do when they are deciding whether to trust a lie for the sake of peace, she said, I hope so. That night, Timmy laid on the floor mat and stared at the ceiling while the owls breathed around him. Outside, the neighborhood was alive with World Cup talk. Men at the corner bar argued over which team had destiny on its side. A radio from the next compound played commentary from old matches. Somebody shouted after a goal in a game happening nowhere near them. Boys in the streets mimicked footballers, their bare feet slapping dust as they chased a plastic ball. The final was 2 days away. Everything around him was becoming a countdown. He could not sleep. By midnight, he stood up, left the room, and went outside where the night air was a little cooler. The compound was quiet except for the distant hum of generators and the occasional bark of a dog. The house looked smaller in the dark, as though it too was afraid. He stared at it for a long time. Then he thought of Don Collar's money, thought of the paper, thought of the final, thought of how one correct prediction could solve everything. The thoughts made his stomach twist with hope and fear in equal measure. He almost laughed at himself. A boy standing in the dark trying to negotiate with destiny like it was an uncle who owed him a favor. He scratched his head and whispered, if I win this thing, everything will change. The knight did not answer. The next day, he returned to Don Collar. This time, the gangster did not smile at first. He was seated in the same office counting cash with two of his boys stood nearby. One was chewing gum like it had wronged him. The other was scrolling through a phone with the serious of a man guarding state secrets. Don Collar looked up when Timmy entered. You came back? Timmy nodded. Your mother knows? No, sir. Don Collar raised an eyebrow. Smart boy. Timmy did not like how that sounded. The paper was placed in the front of him. This time it had more words on it than before. Terms, conditions, collateral, repayment dates, default consequences, the kind of words that looked harmless until they start removing walls from your life. Timmy stared at it. Don Collar slid the pen open. Sign. Timmy hesitated. Don Collar leaned back. You look afraid. I am thinking. That is fine. But think quickly. Timmy's hand trembled as he picked up the pen. For one brief second, he imagined putting it down and walking away. He imagined going home and telling Mama the truth. He imagined her disappointment. He imagined surviving the embarrassment. He imagined an honest life, even if difficult. Then he imagined the roof over the head being taken, the children crying, Mama begging, people coming to remove furniture. His father's memory turned into a debt collection notice. His hand moved. He signed. The room went very still. Don Collar took the paper, looked at the signature, and gave a small nod as if a machine had just completed its task. You have chosen, he said. Timmy said nothing. One of the boys counted bundles of cash and placed them into a brown envelope. Don Collar pushed it across the desk. Careful, he said. Money grows teeth in the hands of fools. Timmy took the envelope. It felt heavier than it should have. In a way, it was. It was not only money. It was pressure. It was hope. It was the beginning of a disaster. He thanked Don Collar and left. On the road home, he bought airtime, stood by a kiosk and checked match previews on his phone like a man looking for permission to become reckless. He kept telling himself he had chosen the right team, the right odds, the right game. He talked himself into certainty because certainty was easier than fear. By the time he got home, the money was hidden inside his shirt under the thin fabric closer to his chest. like a second heartbeat. Mama glanced up at him when he entered. There was something in her face again, worry. He smiled quickly and sat down before she could ask another question. That evening, as they ate, the younger children made jokes about football prediction. Kule says he knows who will win, Shade announced. Kule scoffed. I know more than you. Hey there, if you are listening to us for the first time, please do well to share, like, comment, and subscribe. Thank you. You always losing your small games. Timmy laughed along with them, but underneath the laughter, his mind was already gambling, already calculating, already seeing a future that did not yet exist. The final was coming, and with it a chance or a trap. He could not tell the difference anymore. The day before the final, the whole neighborhood seemed to be speaking football. Even the things that had nothing to do with football somehow got dragged into it. A woman arguing with a trader in the market compared her anger to a defender who had lost focus. Two men at the junction blamed the government for everything, including a missed penalty 4 years ago. Children kicking a plastic ball in the gutter shouted player names with confidence of men who had never paid rent. Timmy moved through all of it like a ghost carrying a secret. He had the money. That should have made him feel lighter. Instead, it made him feel like he was walking around with a live wire in his pocket. He could not stop touching the envelope under his mattress at home, checking it as if it might somehow disappear or grow into something kinder. Every time he thought about what he had done, his stomach twisted. Every time he thought about what might happen if he won, his chest opened with hope. And every time he thought about losing, his mouth went dry. Mama noticed his distraction that morning. Timmy, she said, while pouring pap into a cup. You are not here, he blinked. I am here. You are physically here. Your mind is somewhere else. Kule looked up from tying his school shoe. Maybe he is in Europe already. Shadi giggled. Timmy forced a smile. If I am in Europe, I will not tell you people. Mama shook his head though. Her lips twitched with a small smile. That was one thing Timmy loved about her. Even when she was worried, she still tried to protect the family from too much sadness. But her eyes kept following him. After breakfast, she called him to the side again. This time, there was no playful tone in her voice. Look at me, he did. You are my first son, he swallowed. That means when trouble comes, you carry it first. That is not fair, but it is true. He looked away. Mama took his hand. If you are planning something foolish, stop. His heart jumped. What do you mean? I mean the kind of thing that makes a person hide his face when saying trust me. Timmy laughed weakly. Mama, I am not planning anything. She stared at him long enough to make the lie uncomfortable. Then she sighed. I know your father's blood is in you. Strong, stubborn, and sometimes too confident. But listen to me. Confidence is not the same as wisdom. He nodded. She touched his cheek. If a man has to gamble the roof over his mother's head to prove he is brave, then he is not brave. He is frightened. The words landed hard. He wanted to confess right then. He almost did. But instead, he said, I hear you. Mama searched his face for a while, then let him go. The rest of the day moved slowly. Kule came back from school complaining that his teacher had given them too many assignments. Are they still trying to kill us? He asked dramatically. As he opened his bag, Shade, who was sitting with Mama peeling beans, said, if school can kill you, then don't go again. Child, shut up, Kule said. Timmy laughed. The house for a brief moment became the kind of place it used to be before grief settled permanently. Into the corners, arguments, laughter, small annoyance, ordinary life. The kind of ordinary people do not appreciate until it begins to disappear. But underneath the normal voice, Timmy was restless. He stepped outside in the afternoon and went to the viewing center to check the atmosphere. He did not want to be there exactly. He needed to be there. The place was already packed. Plastic chairs had been arranged in rows. Young men stood at the back arguing over formation they could barely pronounce. The air smelled of sachet water, roasted groundnuts, sweat, and hot impatience. A television hung high on the wall, currently showing pundits talking too confidently about teams they would never meet. Timmy stood at the edge and watched. Everywhere he turned, he saw money in motion, men placing small bets, others arguing about odds, some laughing, some praying, some pretending they were simply there for entertainment, while their hearts clearly had stakes in the game. He noticed one man put a bundle of notes into a betting slip and felt a sudden rush of fear. This is how people lose everything, he thought. Then another voice in him whispered, and this is how people change their lives. The two thoughts fought quietly. He left before anyone could talk him into more nonsense and headed home with his head full of noise. That evening, Don Collar called. Timmy almost dropped his phone when he saw the number. Yes, sir. Are you prepared? Don Collar asked. The question sounded innocent, which made it more dangerous. Yes, sir. Good. Tomorrow afternoon, bring the repayment or the house remain in my hands. Timmy's throat tightened. Sir, the match is tomorrow night. I know what day it is. He hesitated. You are sure I have until after the game? Don Collar chuckled softly. I am not a monster, but you win first. The call ended. Timmy stood still for a long time with the phone in his hand. Not a monster. The words sounded almost funny, except nothing about them was funny. Night came slowly. The family ate light food because the kitchen was beginning to get low again. Papa's framed photo hung on the wall above the small sitting area, looking at them as it always did in silence. Timmy found himself staring at it longer than usual. If Papa were alive, what would he say? Would he be disappointed? Would he understand? Would he see a boy trying and failing to turn fear into courage? He could not know. What he did know was that his chest felt tight all evening, and everyone had gone to bed. He sat outside alone in the front step. The night was warm and mosquitoes were already out in full force, but he did not move. He watched the street light flickered, heard a bike pass, heard laughter from a distant house, heard a radio somewhere counting down to match day like it was a festival. He pulled the betting slip from his pocket and looked at it under dim light from the neighbor's window. His hands trembled for the first time. He felt the full size of what he had done. Not just borrowed money, not just signed paper, not just hoped. He had tied the family house to a football result, a ball, a referee, a final whistle. One night could save them. One night could destroy them. He laughed softly to himself, but it was a broken laugh. This life is wicked, he muttered. The neighbor's dog barked once, as if agreeing. Inside the house, Mama coughed in her sleep. The sound hit him like a warning. He stood up and looked through the curtain at the room where she lay. She looked small under the thin blanket, small and tired and trusting. His throat closed. He should have gone in, should have told her, should have stopped everything, should have chosen the pain of honesty over the danger of silence. But the need to rescue them all had already become stronger than his fear of failure. So he went back to his room and lay down without sleeping. The final was tomorrow. By the next day, his life would either look like a miracle or a mistake. And in the terrible in-between, no one could tell him which was more likely. The day of the final did not arrive quietly. It came with noise, argument, shouting, and a kind of art that made everybody in the neighborhood look like they were already tired before noon. Men in front of shops debated lineups, as if they were selecting ministers. Boys kicked a flat football made of tape and old socks. Women in the market argued about prices, but even their voices carried a restless energy coming of the match. Timmy woke up with a knot in his stomach. He had not slept properly all night. The loan money was under his mattress, hidden beneath a faded wrapper Mama never used anymore. Every time he imagined the final score, his chest tightened. Every time he imagined losing, he felt the house shrinking around him like a trap. Mama noticed his silence over breakfast. She watched him for a while before speaking. You have been looking at air since morning. Timmy gave a small smile. I am thinking about what? Everything. Kunle laughed from the other side of the table. That is how people start failing mathematics. Shade snorted. You fail mathematics without thinking. That made everybody smile a little. Even Mama shook her head, though her eyes stared on Timmy. He pushed his food around with a spoon. The guilt was already beginning to grow. If he told her now, there was still time to stop. If he told her now, the pain would be immediately but smaller. If he told her now, maybe the house could still be saved another way. But shame sat on his tongue like bitter medicine. So he said nothing. Later, he stepped outside and went to the viewing center to feel the mood of the city. Everywhere he turned, people were talking about the match. At the junction, a group of boys were arguing so loud that a passerby told them, "If your shouting can win the game, then keep going." In a kiosk nearby, a radio announcer was analyzing formation and the owner of the kiosk kept interrupting with his own expert opinion. Even the barber, who was lining up a customer's hair, leaned out and said, "My brother, this one is not about strategy. It is about destiny." Destiny. That word stayed with Timmy because that was exactly what he was trying to negotiate with. At the viewing center, the atmosphere felt thick with hope and fear. Men were placing last minute bets, others were pretending not to bet, while clearly having already done so. One man wore a jersey so old it looked like it had survived 3 different political administrations. Another had painted his face with the colors of the team he supported, but the paint had started melting into it. Timmy stood at the back and watched them all. He saw belief in their faces, he saw foolishness, he saw himself. That was the worst part. It was not about the people gambling around him, he was one of them. Only the stake in his case were not just money, they were walls, they were family memories. They were the only inheritance his father left behind. He left before the sound of the crowd got too loud and returned home with his head pounding. Inside the house, Mama was folding clothes. He looked up and asked, "Did you go somewhere?" "Just outside." "Okay." Her answer came too fast, too calm. He knew she was watching him now with a new kind of suspicion. Not because she hated him, because mothers know the face of a child standing at the edge of a lie. That evening, the family tried to act normal. Kule complained about food. Shade argued over the remote. Mama scolded them both. Timmy laughed in the right places. But none of them were fully in the room. The final was approaching like a storm with a smile. After dinner, Mama called Timmy to sit beside her. Her voice was softer than usual. "I want to ask you something." His heart jumped. "Okay." She folded her hands in her laps. "Are you in trouble?" He froze. The question hung there. Then he forced a laugh too quickly. "No, Mama." She studied him. He looked away. "Timmy," she said, "you know you can tell me anything." He nodded, but he still said nothing. And in that silence, the story of the house continued moving toward the moment when it would either be saved or lost. By evening, the neighborhood had turned into one giant heartbeat. Everywhere Timmy looked, people were talking about the final as if their were lives dependent on it. Men stood in front of beer parlors with arms folded, arguing over formation. Boys ran through the streets, kicking a ball made from socks and tapes. Even the women selling food were listening to radios with faces that said they had already decided which team was blessed. Timmy sat at home pretending to be calm. It was not calm. Every time he thought about it, his chest tightened. Every time he imagined losing, his stomach twisted. He kept telling himself that he had made a smart decision. Then another voice in him would answer, "You have made a dangerous one." Mama noticed his silence. "You are too quiet today," she said while stirring soup. "I'm fine," he replied. She turned and looked at him the way mothers do when they already know the answer is a lie. "You are not fine." Quillen laughed from the corner. "He's just acting like a man that has money in his pocket." Shade looked up. "Does he?" Timmy shot Kunle as warning look. "Stop talking rubbish." Mama frowned. "Money?" He forced a smile. "It is nothing." But the room had changed. Mama's eyes were on him now. The air around the dinner table felt tighter. After food, the family sat in the sitting room. The television was on, but nobody was really watching. The commentators were speaking in excited voices, and every few minutes, somebody in the neighborhood would shout at a radio or from a nearby compound as though the game had already started. Timmy's foot kept tapping the floor. Mama noticed that too. Timmy, she said softly, come here. He moved toward her. She patted the mat beside him. He sat. For a moment, she said nothing. Then she asked, what are you planning? His heart thumped. Nothing, he said quickly. She looked straight at him. A mother knows when a child is standing on the edge of something foolish. It followed. I have seen this look before, she continued. It is the look of someone who wants miracle money. Timmy felt it rise in his face. Colin and Shade had gone quiet. Mama lowered her voice. Tell me the truth. He stared at the floor. The silence stretched long enough to become painful. Then he muttered, I just want to help us. Her face softened, but only a little. Then help us with truth, not fear, he said. She cited. Outside, people were already starting to gather around the viewing center. One of the boys in the compound, March don't start soon, no. A man passing by. If this game disappoints me, I will not forgive anybody. The neighborhood laughed. At the center, the crowd was so thick, it felt like a single living thing. Plastic chairs are already be arranged in rows, and people were standing behind them in clusters. The air smelled of sweat, fried snacks, dust, and the kind of tension that makes people talk too loudly to hide their nerves. Timmy went with Kunle and some other boys from the street. Mama stayed back, saying she was not interested, though her eyes betrayed her concern. At the viewing center, the noise was already rising. The screen showed players walking out. People roared. Someone near the front started a prayer. Another man told him, pray quietly. Your faith is distracting us. That got a laugh, but it was a nervous one. Timmy kept checking his phone. No message, no calls, just the shrinking space between him and the final whistle. The match began. At first, everyone watched in tense silence. The first attack came. The crowd exploded. Pass! Shoot! No, no, no! The ball missed. Groans filled the room. One old man shook his head and said, this one is not serious football. A ball beside him answered. The players are also under pressure just like us. That some people laugh. Timmy did not laugh. His hands were clenched so tightly that his nails left little marks in his palm. Every minute felt like a test. Every pass felt like a decision between salvation and humiliation. At halftime, the score was still close. The room burst with arguments. Some people were saying the coach had made a mistake. Others were blaming the referee. One loud man kept insisting that any team that cannot finish chances does not deserve blessing. Timmy stood at the back sweating. He thought of the money under his mattress. He thought of Don Collar. He thought of the house. He thought of his mama's face if he lost. He could barely breathe. The second half began. The pace changed. The tension sharpened. People leaned forward. Even the ones pretending to be cool were no longer pretending. Then came the moment. A fast break. A dangerous pass. A sudden shot. For 1 second, the whole room held its breath. The ball hit the post. The crowd screamed in pain. One man actually fell to his knees. Another shouted, this one is cruelty. Timmy felt his body go cold. If that had gone in, his whole life would have changed. Maybe for the better, maybe for the worse. He did not know anymore. The game continued. Then in the final minutes, the other team struck. Counter-attack, a clean finish, a goal. The room became noisy. Some shouted in joy. Others groaned. A few people just sat down as if the strength had left their bodies. Timmy did not move. He stared at the screen like his brain had not yet agreed to the reality. Then the final whistle blew. His team had lost. His throat tightened. He left the viewing center without waiting for anyone. Outside, the street was full of reaction. Some people argued, some laughed, some cursed. A boy threw his cap on the ground and kicked it. Two men near the roadside began discussing what the coach should have done differently, as though their comment could reverse the result. Timmy kept walking. He did not go home immediately. He sat on a low concrete block near the road and looked at his phone. The betting slip was still there. The money was gone. The house was gone in his mind already, even if not physically yet. His chest felt like it was full of stones. Then Mama's voice came behind him. Timmy, he turned Slowly, she had followed him. In the weak light from the street lamp, her face looked older than it had that morning. She sat beside him. "Did you bet?" she asked. He could not lie again, so he nodded. She closed her eyes for a moment. "What did you bet?" His voice came out small. "The house." Her whole body went still. "The house," she repeated. He nodded, crying now. "I thought I could win enough to save us." She stared at him. The silence between them was worse than shouting. Then she whispered, "Timmy." He covered his face with both hands. "I am sorry." She sat there without moving for a long time. When she finally spoke, her voice was quiet and trembling. "You carried my children's roof to a football game." He cried at her. She did not hit him. She did not scream. She only sat there in heartbreak, so deep that it felt louder than noise. That was the end of the night. Not with violence, not with drama, just the terrible realization that a foolish hope had become a family wound. Don Kola did not waste time. By the next afternoon, everybody in the compound knew something bad was coming before anyone saw it. That is how fear works in neighborhoods like theirs. It travels through silence, through the way children stop playing, through the way adults lower their voices, through the way a black SUV at the gate makes the air itself look nervous. Timmy was inside when the vehicle stopped. Mama saw it first. She stood by the window, looked outside, and went very still. Then she said, almost to herself, "He has come." Timmy's stomach dropped. Kule peeked through the curtain and whispered, "Who is that?" Nobody answered him. The car door opened. Don Kola stepped out in the dark glasses and a dark shirt, clean and calm, with two of his boys behind him. He looked like a man arriving a meeting about business, not destruction. The compound fell silent. Even a neighbor's radio seemed to lower its voice. Mama walked out first. Timmy followed slowly, his legs weak. Don Kola smiled when he saw them. That smile made the whole family feel smaller. "Good afternoon," he said. Mama gave a stiff nod. "Good afternoon." His gaze moved to Timmy. "Well," he said, "we are here." Timmy could barely speak. Don Kola held up the signed paper. "You know why?" Timmy nodded. Mama stepped in front of him. "Sir, please." Don Kola tilted his head. "Please what?" She drew herself up, even though fear was visible in the set of her shoulders. "Please do not take the house." Don Kola looked at her for a long moment. "Madam, your son knew the terms. He is young, so he is hungry," he replied. Timmy flinched. Mama's voice trembled, but she did not back down. "This house is the only thing my children have." Don Kola removed his glasses slowly. That, he said, was exactly why it was useful as collateral. The cruelty of that sentence landed like a slap. Kune came out of the doorway, then his face pale. Shade followed behind him, holding on top his shirt. The children stood there as if they had entered a story they were too small to understand. Mama saw them and her expression changed. Don Kola noticed too. He smiled again, less kindly this time. "You have a full audience." Timmy finally found his voice. "Sir, please give me more time." Don Kola laughed softly. "More time? You lost the money in public. Now you want private mercy." Timmy swallowed. "I will work, I will pay." "With what?" "I don't know yet. That is the problem with boys like you." Don Kola's tone was almost conversational. "You want the consequences to wait until you invent solutions." Mama stepped closer, and when she spoke, her voice was no longer just frightened. There was anger. "Are you happy now?" Don Kola looked at her. She continued, "You took money from a child who was desperate, and now you want to throw a family into the streets." His voice shifted behind him. Don Kola shrugged. "Madam, I did not create desperation." "No," she said, her eyes shining with tears now, "but you are choosing to feed on it." That made the men in the compound go still. For a moment, even Don Kola looked madly surprised. Then he gave a slowly nod. "Respect," he said. "You are brave." Mama did not answer. He turned back to Timmy. 3 days are over." Timmy's knees felt weak. "Please," he said again. Don Kola glanced at the house. "I will be generous. You can remove the things inside today. Tomorrow my people will return with papers." Mama covered her mouth. Shade started crying immediately. Kule shouted, "You cannot just take it." One of Don Kola's boys took a step forward, but Don Kola raised a hand and stopped him. He smiled at Kule. "Young man, life will teach you manners later." Kule glared at him with all the courage and frightened boy could manage. Timmy felt sick. He turned to his mother, "Mama." She looked at him. That look was worse than the threat because it held exhaustion, love, disappointment, and the terrible truth that the mistake was still her son. "Go inside," she said quietly. They spent the next hours gathering whatever they could carry: clothes, books, important papers, the small radio, photographs, Mama's cooking pot, and a tin of old valuables. The house, once alive with laughter and noise, now sounded like a dying thing, being emptied by its own children. Shade cried while folding her dresses. Kule kept asking, "Where would we go?" Nobody had a real answer. Timmy moved from room to room with a swollen throat. This was the house his father had left behind. This was the house where they had celebrated birthdays, buried griefs, prayed for rain, and fought over the last piece of meat. This was the house where he had sat as a boy and believed that adulthood would solve everything. Now, he was helping packed into his bags. At some point, he found the old framed photo of Papa hanging on the wall. He stared at it for a long time. Papa's face seemed to watch him with a kind of quiet disappointment that hurt more than it was imagined. Timmy held the frame tightly. "I am sorry," he whispered. By evening, their things were stacked in piles near the door. Mama sat on the bed with her hands folded in her lap, looking like a woman trying not to break in front of her children. When Timmy came to stand before her, he expected shouting. Instead, she asked, "Did you learn?" His chest tightened. He nodded slowly. "Yes." "What did you learn?" He struggled to speak. Then finally, "That one stupid decision can eat a whole family." Mama closed her eyes. Then she sat, and that shame makes people gamble with what should never be gambled. He knelt beside her bed and cried like a child. Not because the house was gone, not because the debt had been paid, but because even now, with everything collapsing, she still held on to him. Outside, Don Kola's boys waited near the gate. The night air was heavy. The compound felt smaller, and somewhere in that silence, the family understood that the next morning would not bring a repair, but to bring whatever came after ruin. She reached out and touched his hand. "I am angry," she said. He nodded. "I am hurt." He nodded again. "But you are still my son." That nearly broke him. The next morning came without mercy. No one in the house had really slept. They had spent the night sitting in different corners of the room, listening to each other breathe, listening to the compound noises outside, listening to fear make itself comfortable. At sunrise, the family was still there, still poor, still tired, still together. That was the only good thing left. Don Kola's boys returned just after 9 a.m. They did not come outside. They only stood by the gate waiting for the family to finish clearing out the last of their belongings. Mama had already packed most of the important things into sacks. The neighbors watched from a distance. Some looked sorry, some looked curious. A few looked away because sorrow is easier to observe when it is not yours. Timmy carried the last bag out and set it down near the road. He felt empty, not the dramatic kind of empty people talk about in songs. This was a real emptiness. A hollow inside his chest where pride, hope, and foolishness had all been pulled out at once. Mama stood beside him. Kule held one of the sacks. Shade clung to Mama's wrapper. Nobody spoke. Then one of Don Kola's boys stepped forward and said, "We are done." Mama closed her eyes briefly. That was the moment Timmy thought she might collapse, but she did not. She opened her eyes again, lifted her chin and asked, "Where are we meant to go?" The boy shrugged. "That one will be our concern." Timmy's fist tightened. One word, one wrong move, and the whole thing could become worse. He looked at Mama. She looked back and shook her head slightly. "Not now." So he swallowed the fire in him. Don Kola himself did not come that morning. Maybe he did not need to come. Maybe sending boys was part of the humiliation. Maybe that was what power looked like, making your absence feel more threatening than your presence. The family stood on the roadside with their bags and silence. Auntie arrived not long after, carrying a small mattress and a bag of clothes she had managed to gather from her own home. When she saw them outside the gate, her face crumpled. Ah God, she whispered. Mama turned towards her, and for a second, they just looked at each other before hugging with the force of women who had run out of words. Auntie held the children too. Cullen looked angry through his tears. Shade cried openly. Timmy stood there, feeling as though he had aged 10 years in one day. What now? He asked quietly. Auntie took a breath. You come with me for now. Mama nodded. The house behind them stood strangely calm, as if it had never belonged to them at all. That sight hurt more than the eviction itself. They left before midday. The compound door closed behind them with a sound that Timmy would remember for the rest of his life. It was not loud. It did not need to be. At Auntie's place, they crowded into 2 small rooms and a sitting area that was now doing the work of 3 spaces. It was not enough, but it was shelter. It was temporary. It was survival. The children slept on the mattresses on the floor. Mama sat for a long time that afternoon, staring into space. Timmy went outside and sat on the front step of Auntie's house with his head in his hands. He had lost the house, he had lost the money, he had lost his confidence, he had lost the illusion that one lucky night could fix a life built on pain. Everything hurts. Auntie came and sat beside him later. She did not start with anger this time. She only said, "You have done damage." He nodded. "But you are not beyond repair." That made him look up. She continued, "What you did was foolish, dangerous, reckless. But if you keep drowning in it, then the mistakes becomes bigger than the lesson." He stared ahead. "I ate what I did. I know. I ate myself for it." Auntie leaned back slightly. "That part is not useful." He gave a tired half laugh. Then she turned to him seriously. "You will walk." He nodded. "You will help your mother, yes. You will not become the story people expected." He looked at her. "Do you hear me?" "Yes, Auntie." "Good. Because the worst thing a mistake can do is convince you deserve more future." That sentence stayed with him in the weeks that followed. Timmy began to walk wherever he could find something useful to do. He carried goods in the market. He helped a carpenter sand wood. He washed the plates at a small food joint. He even did errands for a shop owner who paid him badly, but on time, which in that season felt like a blessing. It was not glamorous. It was not quick. It was not enough. But it was honest. Mama slowly regained her strength, though the sadness never entirely left her face. The house remained gone. They did not speak of it often. Sometimes, when the children were asleep, she would sit quietly and stare into the dark as if remembering the shape of rooms that no longer existed. Timmy noticed one evening he sat beside her and said, "I know I cannot bring the house back." She looked at him. "But I can build something better than my mistakes. But I can build something better than my mistake." Her eyes filled with tears. He continued, voice shaking, "I don't know how yet, but I will." Mama put her hand over his. "Then begin there," she said. Months later, when people in the neighborhood told the story, they told it with different endings. Some said Timmy was a fool. Some said he was a victim. Some said he was lucky to still have his family. Some said the gang leader should have been arrested. Some said life is unfair and left it at that. But Mama knew the deep truth. The house was gone, the money was gone,
Hey there,
the boy had
if
been
you are
broken
listening to
open,
us for the
and
first
yet
time,
the family
please
was
do well
still
to share,
standing. That was the
like,
miracle no one talked
comment,
about
and
enough.
subscribe.
Not the bet,
Thank you.
not the collapse, not the loss. The miracle was that after all of it, they still had each other, and sometimes after enough suffering, that is the only inheritance that matters.